if it has to be done, there's always a way to do it. Earlier this week, I finished Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee, the third book in the Greenbone saga, and overall, I thought this was a wonderful conclusion to this story. It's always interesting going into the last book of a series for me, because I feel like so much of a series' worth can be weighted on that last book. Does this author wrap up this story well? Do these characters get the arcs that I think they deserve? Is it thematically poignant? Uh, is this a satisfying conclusion? And for me, it's not that a series can live or die by its conclusion, because there are some series that I love that don't have the best conclusions, but also endings really do matter to me. I mean, I know there's that saying that Brandon Sanderson always uses, journey before destination, but sometimes the destination really does matter, because you could end up in a desert or you could end up in an oasis, right? So going into Jade Legacy, I wasn't too worried, because I felt like what Fonda Lee had showed me in both Jade City and Jade War was that she was a competent writer, that she knew where she was going with this story. She knew where she was going with these characters. She knew how to tie the themes into the overarching plot, and that she would deliver a satisfying conclusion. And I was totally right. I was totally right. This is a great conclusion to this series, and I really don't think that there could have been a better one. Now, obviously, conclusions and how much you like a book is always up for debate. It's incredibly subjective. But for me, I think Jade Legacy was pretty much the best way that this series could have ended. I thought the character work here was wonderful. In my opinion, it was the best in the series. I thought the plot here was wonderful. Again, I thought it was the best in the series. And I thought it just wrapped up the character arcs and the overarching story really well. I really like the dynamics here. I really like how Hilo, Shay, Andy kind of pass off their legacy to the next generation. I really like the way that this story wraps up. And I think that it's interesting, because sometimes, for me, a series goes on too long. A series has too many books, or it has too much bloat. Some series I love, it feels like it could be trimmed by a couple hundred pages. But Greenbone is kind of the exception to that, because for me, there were so many ideas introduced into Jade War, and especially Jade Legacy, where I was like, okay, but I really want to see more of that, and we didn't quite get it. But even saying that, it makes sense what Fonda Lee did in this novel. There were some large time skips. There were periods where we were seeing the cause and effect of decisions, and it all makes sense within the story. Now, obviously, I'm a fan of really long series, so I personally would have been okay with another 2 books to flesh out those ideas. But I also really appreciate that Fonda Lee stuck to her original vision. I really think that the way that these characters see the world change around them, they see what cause and effect happens in their lives and the lives of those around them they care about and their enemies, is very interesting. It's one of the things I really like about Greenbone, is this idea that something will happen in the first book, and then it'll have payoff in the third book. And it's not just a small payoff, it's a massive worldwide payoff. It has serious implications within the world. It's something I really appreciate about her writing, is that idea of what actually would happen if this were to occur. And then she plays it out. Whether that's through a time skip or through natural plot progression, she plays out, and we get to see what the result is. And I really like that. So honestly, this is just a great book. I will admit, though, this is my con for the series, that I'm not completely in the Greenbone world, if that makes sense. There are so many series I've read that they convinced me I was in that world, right? Wheel of Time, Dark Tower, Malazan, whatever it may be, there was something about the writing that conveyed to me that this was a living, breathing world. Whereas Fonda Lee, she writes in a very kind of just informal way, in a very tamed, precise way. And while I appreciate that, it's very, very, very precisely written. It just lacks something for me that doesn't quite work on all levels. Like, the world building is solid, the character work is solid, the themes are solid, the plot is solid, but there's just something about these books that don't quite connect to me personally. Now, maybe it's because I'm, not Asian. Uh, Maybe it's because it's a modern setting. Maybe there's just something wrong with my brain that I don't, it doesn't quite work for me. But it feels like a lot of my issue with this series is that Fonda Lee does a lot of telling instead of showing. And that ultimately for me does not really, really work in a series that is supposed to be so focused and so family dynamic focused, and this whole idea of legacy. So that would really be my only con for this series and for this book, is that continues. I will admit, there was a scene in this where I was like, "Oh, like she really, she got me. Like she didn't make me cry, but I was genuinely upset." And that was finally a moment where I felt like she was actually showing consequences instead of telling me about them. She was showing me the emotional weight. She was giving me that character that I wanted to like explore, and then it just kind of, the scene happens and I was like, "Oh, I didn't expect that." And it really, really, really worked. And I just wish the entire series had been written that way. And obviously, that's my opinion. Other people, they really love this series. It makes them cry, all those things. And I'm not going to discredit Fonda Lee. It's a personal bias. It's something I like versus what other people might be able to overcome. But that really is my only con when it comes to this series. Overall, though, it's a great series. It's one I would strongly recommend to people who want something different from their fantasy books. If you're someone who is tired of medieval Europe European-centric fantasy, I would highly recommend this. If you are a fan of family dynamics, I highly recommend this. If you're a fan of crime drama, I really recommend this. If you're a fan of politics and international politics and causation and the result of that causation, cause and effect, if you like that, if you like seeing that, and how family dynamics change over the course of literal decades, I really, really recommend this. And I think it's just a really wonderfully written series that I'm going to just I'm going to give a good rating to. I think Jade Legacy is wonderfully written, great characters, great story, and I feel like Fonda Lee, she earns her flowers. For the people who really like this series, I get it. I totally, totally get it. It's deserved. Jade Legacy, 8.8 out of 10.